Greetings, viewers. I am Eric the Car Guy. Thanks for tuning in today, and hey, if it's your birthday, happy birthday. Enjoy the digital cake I found for you out on the internet. Yummy. Today's video falls under the Cool Story Bro playlist that I have put together, and every once in a while I do one of these. And this one in particular is about the truck and my experiences with it yesterday, which weren't all good. Anyway, starts out, truck doesn't have any heat. It's starting to get a little bit chilly, and I noticed when I was driving and I was like, you know what? It's up to operating temperature. Well, actually, let me back up a little bit more. You might remember from my towing videos and all that, the temperature was actually reading low in the truck. It was about 140, 150 while driving down the highway. I felt that was too low. So job one was I went in and replaced the thermostat. There was a 180-degree thermostat in it, even though it was reading like 140, 150. I replaced it with a 195 thermostat. And at the time I had noticed that the heat wasn't so great before replacing the thermostat. I thought bringing the engine temperature up might help cure the problem. And honestly, doing that and putting that thermostat in really did bring the temperature up. Now I'm running about 200 degrees-ish. So 195, 200, which is, it's a happy place for me. But I still don't have heat. So I'm like, what the heck's going on here? So I first start feeling around the hoses that go into the heater core. And neither one of them was hot, and neither one of them was cold. They were just kind of, whatever. So I thought, okay, I'll bleed the air out of the cooling system again. You know, I just replaced the thermostat and thought I might just give that another try. I gave it a try and still no joy. It still wasn't heating up. And I'm just like, man, it's getting colder and I want the truck to have heat, and I don't know what the heck's going on with this. I don't want to have to replace the heater core. So the first thing I did was I disconnected the heater hoses, made myself some longer hoses, and soaked the heater core overnight in, let's say, a popular brand of decalcifying and something substance. 3 letters are in its name, let's just put it that way, that stand for stuff. Let it soak in that overnight. Came back the next day, flushed it out with some compressed air and some water, ran it all through there, and I thought, okay, now let's try it again. Still no joy. You know, after bleeding air out of the cooling system and all that, I'm like, what the heck? So, on these trucks, there's a plastic panel on the HVAC on the inside that you can remove, and there's the heater core, which is kind of awesome, except for the one screw that's stuffed back up by the firewall. With the carpet and the insulation in place on the floor, it's tricky to get to say the least. Anyway, I got that out. And I felt the heater core directly and was like, you know what, it's just not getting heat. I don't know what the heck's going on here. At this point, I'm test driving it and doing other things. I'm messing around with, you know, transmission, engine settings and all that kind of stuff. So I'm getting on the highway and I just matted it. Still, I didn't have any heat. So I'm like, oh crap. So I just decided to replace the heater core and just be done with it and move on. Actually, they're not that expensive. Installed the new heater core and started it up, bled the air out of the system, still no heat. I'm like, really? Really, at this point, you still don't have heat? Just for good measure, after replacing the heater core, I took the old one, cut it in half, and looked through it. Well, as you can clearly see, it is not clogged. So the heater core was never the issue. Good thing it didn't cost that much. At this point, I'm frustrated, so I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna take it out on the highway. I want to check this other problem. The other problem I was having was stalling when I'd come to a stop, especially after getting off the highway. So I wanted to cruise up the highway and basically, like I said, mat it to the floor, see if I could really get that coolant circulating through the heater core, and see if my adjustments, which was timing it idle. I was at 20 degrees, I put it at 16, it's better now, and it's weird. Anyway, no, we're not talking about that. Anyway, I go to take the truck out of the parking lot in front of the shop, and it hesitates on me. I'm like, what are you doing now? What is this? And I get to the stoplight, and it's idling fine. But then I go up the hill, and I've got very little to no power, and I'm like, oh crap, this thing is out of gas. Thing is, it's still reading a quarter tank. So I'm like, what? Yet something else. You're never done. Project cars, you're never ever done. And this one, She's finicky, man, really finicky sometimes. Anyway, I'm thinking, okay, the gas station's not too far, and why I didn't go to the gas station across the street is beyond me. I guess because I get a discount at the gas station up the street, that's why I wanted to go there. So I'm going up the hill, I get about a quarter mile, truck dies completely, it's done. It's not going anywhere, it is out of gas. It says, I got no juice, I am going nowhere. I was able to pull over to the side of the road in a turn-off lane. It's a 2-lane road leading up the hill, and this is late in the day, getting rush hour time, so it's starting to get busy. Good Samaritan sees me along the side of the road, pulls over, and he's like, dude, need help? I'm like, man, thanks a lot. I know I'm out of gas. He lived in the neighborhood that I had just pulled over in front of. I'm like, but thanks for stopping. And he was cool, and that's when the police pulled up behind me. Local Mason police. So they pull up behind me, and I get out and I explain to the officer, I'm like, look, I'm out of gas. My shop is literally at the bottom of the hill. I can get a gas can, get some gas, come up here and get the heck out of here. I'm just worried about leaving my truck. And she said that she would sit there with her lights on to make sure that nobody like rear-ended. I had my 4-ways on and everything, but anyway. So the police are now involved. So she sits and parks herself behind my truck and turns on her lights so that everybody knows that, you know, not to crash into my truck. I go walking down the hill, like I said, about a quarter mile, and I get all the way down to the bottom, and I'm almost to the shop, and I'm trying to work this out in my head. I'm like, all right, I'm going to see if the people next door can give me a ride up to my truck. I'll grab my gas can and get some gas and go up there, and that way I only have to worry about that. Anyway, I'm down almost to the bottom of the hill, about to cross the intersection, and there's no traffic. I mean, there's a line of traffic, everybody's stopped, it's not moving. I'm like, oh, perfect time to cross. As soon as I go to cross, my foot catches on the asphalt. I went flat out on the road, right in the middle of the road. There's Eric, the car guy. Sunglasses went flying off. Here I am on my hands on my face, skinned my knees, hurt my hands. I have to pick myself off the pavement in front of an entire audience of traffic that is lined up across the hill. I'm sure it entertained them, because out of nowhere, here's this guy trying to cross the street, and bam, right there in the middle of the street. Like I said, pick myself up. I'm like, I got stuff to do. I got to take care of this. Get to the shop. I go next door. I check with them. Only one guy working. I can't leave. I can't help you. I'm like, all right. So I grab my gas can, and I grab the Element, since that was already parked outside. Go over to the gas station, fill up my little tank of gas, run up the street, fill up the tank in the Chevy, and get that thing moved out of the way. Thank the officer for hanging out and all that stuff, and like really grateful to the Mason police, so thanks for that. Anyway, pulled my truck over, turned my Element around, came all the way back down the hill, parked it at the shop, walked all the way back up to where I'd parked the truck because nobody was there to help out. It was cool. You know, it was a nice day, so it was not like I was fighting weather or anything like that. You know, so, and it was good for me to get out and get some exercise. Let's just say that. But anyway, I get in the truck, and I'm like, what the heck is wrong with you? So at this point, I'm kind of frustrated. So when I got on the highway this last time, I speed shifted it with the ratcheting shifter. So I ratcheted it all the way down into first gear. I matted the gas and then just took it all the way to the red line, like 6,000 RPM. I'm shifting like bang, bang, bang. And it just sounds good though. Sounds really good. Get on the highway, and I'm on the highway not long after that, and all of a sudden the heat starts working. I'm like, all right, well, at least I got this out of it. And then my adjustments to the timing that I'd mentioned, I came to a stop, and it didn't stall on me anymore. For whatever reason, it likes to be at 16 degrees base timing at idle, and not 20 degrees, which actually gives me more intake vacuum, so it's a little weird. Doesn't like that. Well, I had to learn that the hard way. Anyway, solve those two problems. The truck now has heat, but there you go. There's my story about me laying in the street in front of a bunch of people, messing with the heat on the truck, just, you know, living the hot rod life, man. Honestly, I wouldn't trade any of this for the world, despite the issues and things that I had. But I hope this story was amusing to you, this cool story, bro, and that you maybe found some useful information from it. I don't know. Anyway, that's what I do here. I make videos and talk about stuff. How about you share an experience about maybe when you ran out of gas? I've only done it one other time in my life, and that was, I think, on my 30th birthday. It was my 67 Catalina. I ran out of gas. Same thing. gas gauge wasn't reading correctly. And by the way, I tried to get the gas gauge to read correctly on the truck. It's not quite working right. I think the sending unit. So that means the gas tank has to come back out again, and I have to deal with that, but it's got a full tank in it now, and I'm not really worried about it. I just know when it gets to 1/8 of a tank, it's empty. Definitely empty. Anyway, how about you share a story about when you ran out of gas or whatever down in the comments? I'd love to hear about it. And I want to thank you for tuning in today. If you have automotive questions, I ask you head to air@thecarguy.com. That will be linked in the description along with additional videos and info and stuff like that. So check the description for more stuff. Thank you again for watching today. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. I will see you next time. Bye-bye. For those of you that stuck around to the end of the video, here are the updates. The truck still doesn't have good heat, and I mean, I have gone through it and gone through it. I'm beginning to suspect some kind of issue with the water pump. I mean, I even went so far as to switch the heater hoses from one side to another to see if that would help. New thermostat, all this stuff. I'm wondering if my reverse rotation water pump is not exactly reverse rotation because of the impeller. I honestly don't know. I mean, I've called people, I've talked to them, I've explained the problem. But let's just break it down like this. Originally, the heater hose that went into the heater core, which the inlet is here on this right side, came off the back of the intake manifold. So it was hot engine coolant. Now, I'm coming off directly off of the water pump. But if you look where that inlet is, or where that piece is, which is right there, it's directly above the inlet. So into the water pump is this lower hose. The way this thing is cast, it almost looks like that inlet, or this pipe here isn't an outlet, it's actually an inlet. And like I said, I switched things back and forth over here. I'm still getting no luck. You know, no matter what I'm doing, I can't get this thing to get consistent heat. I have an update on the no heat issue. Well, I've since gone back through and I believe I've discovered the problem, and it is the water pump. My water pump, I believe, is not a reverse rotation water pump. I basically put a different hose on the outlet of the water pump that's supposed to be going back to the heater core. And when I did that, started up the engine, there was virtually no coolant coming out of that hose. So I then took the drive belt off, left that same practice hose on there, if you will, rotated the water pump in a clockwise direction. A reverse rotation would rotate counterclockwise. Anyway, I rotated in a clockwise direction and I got coolant coming out of that hose. So my reverse rotation water pump that's on this March Performance setup is not reverse rotation. And that's the reason why I don't have heat. And it might have been the reason why my thermostat wasn't working good when I had a 180 in there instead of a 195. So, guess I gotta get on the phone with March Performance, figure out what to do next on that problem. And that's not all. Also, I'm still stalling at stoplights, that whole thing with the timing and everything. This engine likes it at 20 degrees of timing at idle. I mean, it really, really is happy there. I got good engine vacuum, about 15 inches with it in drive and my foot on the brake, which for an engine with a cam, that's pretty darn good. But it's smooth idle, everything, it's great. But when I get off the highway and I come to a stop especially, I'll be coming to that stop and it'll fight me. It'll act like it wants to stall. And then when I finally get stopped, it stalls. If I keep creeping forward, it doesn't stall. If I throw it in neutral, it doesn't stall. That leads me to think maybe a torque converter clutch problem with it staying engaged. All right, I just got the idle problem solved, yes. And that was, well, kind of a long, hard fight. What it ended up being was the idle screw adjustment on the throttle body itself. I noticed when I was just looking through the parameters and everything on the tablet that my IAC, my idle air control valve, was like 30% open. So it was like open really, really far and seemed to be about out of its adjustment. So I went through and I did that procedure again. I did it when I first started out. I don't know if the rings have seated in and the engine's just different now, whatever. I've got a few miles on it since I did the rebuild. But anyway, I've made that adjustment and now my idle is fine. I can come to a stop and everything is great. It appeared that the stalling was a result of just the idle air control valve just being out of adjustment. So I just opened up the throttle plate a little bit so that the idle air control valve didn't have to work a lot. In case you were wondering, the idle air control valve should read 5 to 15% in gear. So with it in gear and at idle, it should read between 5 and 15%. It took a dance to figure out how to get there, but I got there. It's idling, it doesn't stall anymore. That problem's solved. Now I need to sort out that water pump. Anyway, thanks for sticking around. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. I'll see you next time.